Hey guys, this is Grant Evans, your favorite Utah realtor. We are here today again with Boston Taylor of Security National Mortgage. We are here at the closing table. I really like that. I feel like that name's kind of catching on a little bit.
It's good.
As more if I say it, we're at a table. Looks like a closing table. It just fits. We're going to talk today about something that's really important, especially in this market that it's getting closer to a buyer's market. It's really important, I think, to invest. You want to invest when things are going your way. So the big thing, I kind of have a beef with Bigger Pockets. I'm just going to say that. If anybody loves Bigger Pockets, I'm sorry if that offends you. But Bigger Pocket, I feel like, makes it really easy to invest. They're like, oh yeah, I know a lot of people on the podcast are like, I own 100 rental properties and I manage all of them. Like, it's a bunch of bull crap. I'm calling bull crap on that because I manage one and that's already enough. And so they say, oh yeah, I cash flow, $100,000 a month. No, investing's like freaking hard. Like, getting into it, especially getting that first one in, is really hard. And I think it's our job to kind of debunk this and say, look, this is a realistic expectation of what it takes to have your first time investment property. So I'll just kind of go with so my first investment, it was our primary house. If anybody's listened to a former episode, you probably already know this, but bought our first house, lived in it for a couple years, and then we found another house that we really liked, bought that, turned our first house into an investment. That's probably, I think, in my opinion, that's probably the easiest way to invest. Like, we put 10% down for our first house. We were blessed enough to have a gift down payment from my parents to get into our first place. And then, then it just kind of builds from there. So like with our second house, we're going to turn that into a rental and then so on. Well, would you say there's maybe an easier way to do that? Or how did you get in your first rental property?
Well, I'll agree with you first on the Bigger Pockets thing. They do talk a lot about how like these 18, 19-year-old kids own like 25 doors.
Bullcrap. Like, and they probably live in like Alabama or Mississippi where like the houses are like $80,000.
Yeah.
Here we're in Utah where the average house is $600. So yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking to the more real investor here on this podcast.
We're not trying to paint a hopeful picture.
Yeah. But Bigger Pockets does have really good stuff with like analyzing properties, calculating risk and all of
house
that.
Hacking. Like, I do like a lot of their stuff. I just don't like that they make it seem it's like so easy.
Yeah. I know. And honestly, it is really hard. For us, our first investment was actually a townhouse, and it was in American Fork. So we actually still live in it, but we're going to actually soon move out of there and go into a new one. But there's a lot of things to consider when you are investing. There's multiple different highways and paths that you can take, and you need to figure out what you really want to do. Because if you're going to do like a fix and flip or short-term rental, long-term rental, I mean, there's a million different other ways you can invest in things. House hacking is super popular. And honestly, I think the majority of people who ask me, like, they're reaching out to me on my Instagram or calling me, they're mostly like people that I've known who have reached out to me, see that I do lending and investment lending. They're like, hey, dude, tell me straight. I want to buy a house, but I want to like get rich quick. They don't say that, but I know they're thinking that. Real estate is not a get rich quick scheme unless you're like flipping houses.
Well, even then, like you still are spending a ton of money on that initial investment with the hope of getting a good profit out of it.
Yeah. So you're
HGTV. That bugs me too.
The majority of people who ask me too, they also are married, like newly married. They want to live in like this beater that's awesome cash flow. Their wife does not. So it's finding that balance. They want to live in their dream home and at the same time, either subsidize their payment or make money living in a house.
I know a lot of people too, they want to like rent out a basement, but like what if the basement doesn't
rent
have an
out
entrance?
Rooms.
Okay, here's my thing with house hacking and like being married. So Bigger Pockets talks about this a lot, and you've probably heard this. There's a spectrum between comfortability and profitability. The more profitable you are, the less comfortable you are. Mm-hmm. The more comfortable you are, the less profitable. So it's always kind of finding that balance. Having kids now, there's no way in hell that I would rent out rooms in my house. No way. And like I want to be on that side of being comfortable.
Yeah. Even if you don't have kids, you probably should not be doing that.
No, I think it's probably more common in like LA or maybe New York where like it's really expensive, and you do have to rent out the rooms in order to make it worthwhile. But yeah, I feel super uncomfortable if I am married, but if we didn't have kids and we rented out the rooms in our house, I know my wife would not want to be home.
Yeah,
like she would be like, I don't want to go home today.
Yeah, and to me that's not really worth it. It really doesn't make it that much more profitable.
It's not worth the $400 a month.
Exactly.
To be uncomfortable.
I think some of the things to consider too, at least when you are purchasing a home, is a lot of people are like, okay, I want to live in a nice house, and then I'm going to own or occupy a fourplex. So let me give you...
You rant about it.
Here is the lending standpoint. Our underwriter, the second that you give me that scenario that you lived in a nice single-family home and you're all of a sudden wanting to own or occupy a fourplex, our underwriter will shut it down, and anyone else's. Why? Because you have to at least have a vertical change or an upgrade. So how that list works is it goes fourplex, triplex, duplex, condo, townhome, single family. So if you go from even a normal house to a townhome, you need to have a good reason as to why you're going to do it, more so than just because you want to make money renting it out. That's not going to fly. You can do it, and people have done like a downgrade, but it's because of a way obvious reason. Like, yeah, our neighborhood's dangerous. This is the only house available. We need to jump in, whatever. So understanding that is really important. For us, we started with a townhome. So our goal is to at least own or occupy a couple townhomes, because for me, they're great rentals. You have great tenants. For the majority of people, it's, young families. They take great care of their stuff. Their kids aren't trashy. I mean, the quality of tenant is awesome. They're protecting your asset. All these things are things you need to consider versus, you can get a tenant who has no job history, no credit report. They're going to pay you more in rent, but are they a high quality tenant? Will they take care of your asset? Because if you think about it, the $300 or $400 you're getting extra a month, is that going to justify them smashing holes in your wall like with their frat bros? Or I don't know, like all these things are things you need to consider. For me, I think if you want to just live on your own, not hack anything, townhome is awesome. But again, it always will depend on your circumstance. If not, having a basement rental is amazing.
It definitely is. So couple stories. So beginning of 2022, I had a guy who really wanted to get into real estate investing, but him and his wife didn't own anything. And so they were thinking, I could co-sign with a cousin who's got some money from Bitcoin that he can withdraw and use as a gift, which ended up happening, but we didn't buy on this property he was thinking about. So we were thinking there was this house in Springville, $600,000. It had a basement apartment. Now their payment was going to be like $6,000 a month. Because they don't have any money down, really. They were going to get like the minimum down with mortgage insurance and everything. Like, no. So I told him, I was like, look, dude, Bob, I'm not going to say his name. This doesn't make sense. Like, what if you leave? You can't rent that place out for $6,000 a month. At least not in this current market anyway.
Yeah.
And so we eventually got to a point. I said, look, just get into a place where you and your wife are comfortable in, and then get to that point where sure, maybe you can rent out half the basement or rent out the whole basement and make money off that. So eventually they moved into a condo in Provo. It was a great rental area for sure, because it's next to the railroad tracks, like right next to it with the front runner and everything. But in the next couple of years, that's going to be a great rental spot, because you got people who are graduated from BYU and are married, or you got, just other business people there that need a place to stay. And so I love, I like the idea of a condo or a townhome too to rent out, because you have your HOA. Not a lot of people like HOAs, but you don't have to mow the lawn. You don't have to maintain the outside.
You get all the benefits of home ownership without
having to pay you being the land. It's almost like there's a property manager for you.
Yeah.
The only difference is that you still have to take care of the inside. And I know people are like, well, you have a deposit. It's like, well, deposit doesn't cover all the damages most of the time. And so another story, I already forgot the story. Yeah, I already forgot it. I'll figure it out later. But now I forgot what I was going to talk about. See, this is why we're going to put it in this podcast right here. A broke agent does it all the time. They always get stuck. I feel like you need to say something.
No, you're good.
My
I
brain's
think
going off.
I agree with like townhomes and condos are awesome because of that aspect. You don't have to hire someone to go mow the lawn. You don't have to hire someone to like. I mean, if anything with a townhome, the HOA will cover the exterior. So if you haven't this is something you need to talk to an insurance agent about, or even me. I guess you can talk to me about it. But an HO6 policy on a townhouse is awesome when you're renting it, because it's like a walls in policy. So anything that happens walls in, your insurance covers it. It's like $20 a month.
Yeah.
HOA, most are like, depending on where you go, like excluding Daybreak, is pretty affordable.
Mm-hmm.
Like we pay $95 a month and they do everything. Grass, snow. I mean, it doesn't seem like they do a lot, but
you yourself as like the landlord don't have to do anything as far as maintenance.
It's awesome.
Which is great.
That's why I really like those townhomes, because again, that aspect is awesome. You want to get an asset that's going to help you stay sane and also produce a great reward, just like you were saying, like comfort and profitability.
Oh, this is the other story I was going to say. For people that are looking to get into their own home too, and like they want to fix and flip something. So I've got a buddy of mine. I love him. I love him to death. There was this house in Spanish Fork that we saw the other day, built in like 1905. 1922. It was 100 years old. And the people who had owned it previously had demoed all of it. So there's like no kitchen, no bathrooms, nothing. Like they brought it all the way down to like the plaster. And I kept telling him, we need to get into something where like your family is going to enjoy living in, and that you're not going to be upside down and everything. So the house was $300,000. We're thinking we could get a $100,000 renovation loan. Long story short, he couldn't qualify for it. But I'm like, why, if you're going to spend $100,000 on renovating a house, why don't you just buy something for $400,000 and don't have to do anything to it? I mean, it always happens that you like do a remodel and it always costs more than you think. 110%.
150%.
Yeah. There's no way it's like, oh, this is going to cost $100,000. No.
Especially if you're doing it yourself. Especially if you're first time.
Well, even if you're hiring a contractor, it's going to be a lot more.
Yeah.
You're just thinking, oh, it'll probably be like $100,000. No.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's going to be a lot. And then even then, like a contractor go in and say, oh, this is different than I thought. I'm going to have to charge you $5,000 more.
Yeah.
So people who are first time investing, like so this is my thing. Tell me if you do something. Buy the primary house, live in it for a bit, like what you're doing with your townhome, and then go on to the next one, rent it out. Have you ever invested in REITs or anything like that? REIT, if anybody's wondering.
Real estate investment
trust. Yeah. I like the idea. I haven't seen it a whole lot, but I guess just the idea is like you put in, it's like kind of like a stock market type thing where like we're part owner, like a big apartment building in LA or something like that. Yeah. So you put in $1,000, that equals being 0.1%. So you're 0.1% of this building and you get 0.1% of the rent.
Space there's 100 different REITs that you can invest in.
I haven't, if anybody's listening to this and knows more about like REITs, like comment on this video so we can learn more, or say like, man, I can't believe you guys don't know anything about REITs. You guys need to learn more, which we do. Oh, I hit something. That's the best way. I think it's really hard, like for a first time investor to kind of go in and say, I'm going to put 20% down on a house, unless you do like a HELOC or something like that. So,
or a gift. Realistically, you should be leveraging yourself on your first investment.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to make your payment more expensive. You're going to pay mortgage insurance probably, but is that the end of the world? No. Is $150 a month or whatever mortgage insurance is going to be worth the additional 15% that you're going to put down, or 17%?
And then end up being like $100,000 just to save a couple $100 a month.
Especially if you're in Utah, the market's going to ride that off for you probably pretty quick. Like 2 to 3 years, we're estimating. So we bought our townhouse for like $415-ish. We're going to probably finish our basement, put in like, it's going to cost us like $13,000, $15,000. Our ARV, or after our value after finishing our basement, adding a bathroom and a bedroom, it's going to be $515. So that's that alone. I think if you can add some equity, that's not going to be super strenuous, that you can kind of do easily. Lipstick on a pig stuff, that's obviously not lipstick on a pig, but $15,000 for almost $100,000. Yeah, that's worth it.
Worth it.
And then rather than selling the property, just refinance You can either pull some cash out if you'd like to, and then ideally you knock off mortgage insurance, your payment's solid, and you have a ton of equity in this home. So it's the building assets is something that you also need to look out for if you're going towards the long-term rental play, rather than, I'm going to get rich in like 1 year. I'm going to live in this house, sell it, make $200,000. Like bigger
that
pockets.
Did happen last year.
Yeah, if you did buy the last couple of years, but right now you got to kind of be more. I'm going to be your realistic enemy. I don't know how you say
your
that.
Your realistic friend, not
your
enemy.
Realistic friend. Yeah, there's a lot of realities that come into real estate investing that are kind of frustrating. Like one of the things is repairs. It doesn't matter how good you are at calculating how much a repair is going to cost or a full-blown fix. You're going to most likely be paying at least 10% more than you thought.
Well, I think it's also I think this is a must on any investment property you get is to have a home warranty. Like little plug in for IBEX, little shout out to IBEX. I love them. Like pay $600 for the whole year, $65 for any repair. Granted, they have a limit, right? They can't do $10,000 worth of repair because it was a $10,000 fridge or whatever. But it definitely helps save a lot of money. So another thing with like home warranty, we've had in our first house, we have a weird oscillating type furnace that goes out every year. And now we're in November and I'm waiting for it to like get the call and say, hey, our furnace doesn't work. But I like that I can just call my home warranty and say, hey, can you fix this? Like, sure, it's $65, which is still cheaper than if I called my personal HVAC guy. It's like, oh, that's going to be $110. Yeah. And then every time it's funny. The home warranty guy will call me and say, you should probably get a new furnace. I'm like, well, can you guys pay for it? Like, well, no. And I'm not getting a new one. I'm just going to pay the $65 every time.
Yeah.
I don't pay $3,000 for a new furnace.
Yeah, that's funny. I think kind of to wrap up, like if everyone asked me like, I want to invest, what do I do? If I were to give like the most general counsel possible, I honestly would say to buy a home with a rentable basement that needs some work done to it, some lipstick on a pig, and over time, just throw in like, hey, new countertops, or you could do hardwood floors yourself, paint it yourself. Exactly.
Not like on a full-on gut job, yeah.
Not a gut job, lipstick on a pig.
Now,
because that stuff goes a long, long way, and it's really easy.
The only thing that I'm thinking, so like my friend who was like looking at this house with a basement or a basement apartment, $600,000. They don't have.
Yeah, dang.
Then it doesn't make sense. Well, I think what ends up making sense is whatever your payment is. I mean, in a perfect world, get a house with a basement rental or like a detached tiny home or something like that. That's definitely ideal if you can afford it.
Yeah.
For first-time investors, I think we're looking at people who are primary homeowners looking to get into their next place. And maybe there's a way you can do your HELOC and you can buy that $600,000 home in Springville with the basement. Then it makes more sense.
Yeah.
But I think having a basement would be ideal.
Yeah.
It's just hopefully it is achievable, or at least has an entrance.
Exactly.
If the basement at least has an entrance, you can make it whatever you want.
Exactly. So there's the other thing into this too is when you're asking these questions and finding yourself like, oh, I'm becoming more serious. I want to know like, hey, you need to talk to someone. Like
you need to talk
a professional.
No, like you need to plug in and say, you guys need to talk to me.
Talk to me. Talk to Grant. Because I'm going to be 100% honest. This is like my career, my job. I look at, 2 to 3 investment transactions every single day, like legitimate ones. So I can kind of call BS on, these other property because I know the market pretty well. So I know generally what's happening. So when people are, saying these dumb numbers, I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You
Preach, Boston. Preach.
But the best thing that you can do, find someone who knows what they're doing, get their advice, trust their advice, and then, it's a long-term play. If you play it long-term and you're patient, you're going to become wealthy. It's basically a factor guarantee even.
Yeah. Well, we are over time. We're almost at 20 minutes. And so we would talk about this more because I think real estate investing is awesome and that it's definitely the way to go to make money. It's definitely not a get rich quick scheme, but it's good in the long run. So how can people reach out to you, Boston?
On my Instagram or phone. So Instagram is mortgage_Boston. And then my phone number, you could text me or call me. It's 801-473-4404.
Awesome. Thanks for watching The Closing Table, and we'll see you next time.